Hi there. Welcome to Ask Wood Live. I'm John. Kevin's
Kevin.
behind you.
Hey guys.
And we just wanted to show off some of the new stuff coming out in our new issue. So this is our newest issue that will be mailing soon to subscribers, or you'll see it on newsstand. And one of the projects in here is a horizontal mortiser. So we just wanted to kind of show this off and show you what it was about and some features on it, just to explain what in the world it is and why do you want one. So the project itself is building a carriage that you mount a router motor in. It obviously travels side to side and forward and back. And one of the really nice things about this system is you can obviously put in different size bits to do different size mortises. So we want to just kind of go through and show you a few options of how to use the thing, how to set it up, how to run it. Any thoughts yet?
Yeah, he said welcome to live. Let's if you have any questions at any time, just type them in and we'll try to get to them. Doesn't have to necessarily be about the mortiser we're showing you here, but anything's fair game. So the show's about you.
So with this guy, what we're doing is doing a double mortise. This is going to go into a workbench. So this will be a rail that connects two legs, and it will have a double mortise in it. Inside these, you can put floating tenons. So for this particular instance, we're going to put a floating tenon in each one, use the same machine to cut the mortises in the legs that this will go into, and it's just a great way to quickly produce a nice strong wooden joint. So initially on this one you've seen me cut the bottom. To cut the other side, what I have to do is flip it over. With this jig, how I've set up the table, I didn't want it too fancy. It's not like I produce workbenches every day, right?
Well, most
every third day.
Every third day there's a workbench being created, I think.
So I have a couple things going on. I have a line here on the side that tells me where to line the side of this up.
Or you could screw a cleat down and have it sitting in the
exactly.
cleat, next to it. Yeah.
So all I'm doing here is I have a tick right there. I actually have a line on the front that tells me how far to the left this travels. If I wanted to, I could do another tick on the right. So in this system, I didn't get too crazy. All I want to do is have something fast, simple, and dirty. Probably over clamp it with 4 clamps, but now I'm ready to go on the second side. I can pull that off and actually hear. So you can see how fast you can cut a very accurate, very smooth-walled mortise in a pretty big workpiece. This we're running a 1/2-inch spiral bit, but obviously you can run smaller ones. Should we show them some of the other tables?
Yeah.
So
I think you maybe I'll kind of explain maybe how you're adjusting for height too.
Sure.
And I know just one thing for sure. One thing I was talking to John about this is it's kind of cool because if you are a right hand or left hand dominant person, the levers he can flip flop to the other side. So if you're a left hander and you want to control one with your left hand over opposed to your right, the thing's reversible. Anything?
Yeah. So this runs on hardened steel shafts. So you have a hardened steel shaft running side to side, front to back. You have bronze bushings within those, so it's running on a very smooth system. This is just a steel strap that we've cut to length, shaped, and put some cold glue on. It actually has shaft collars, So you can set how far this thing travels. So this shaft collar can loosen. There we go. And you can put this anywhere on the travel. So what I've pretty much done there is I've limited my travel side to side if I have a narrower workpiece, or I can open it up all the way. So for this project, we wanted a nice carriage, something solid, something smooth that's pretty precise. And then for the table, we wanted to kind of keep it simple, keep it not too complicated. So what we've done for the table is created some skids and then a spacer system. So it can be user adjustable. Oh, come on out. So what's holding that down is just some 4-inch bolts. And then this is your table. This is permanent. Within this skid is a trapped square nut.
Ask someone to post a comment just to confirm that we're live.
Oh,
Yeah, just ask another
someone post a comment, anybody, just to confirm we're live.
But I got one comment from Jen Gordon,
Oh,
which is an interesting, and we'll get to that if you're still
Okay.
there.
so within this, to raise and lower the table, you just add or delete these little.
Jeremiah Rodriguez says, "You're live."
You're live. Wonderful. Usually I'm in here talking to myself, so it's nice to know that this is actually working. To bring this table up and down, you add or delete these spacers. So what I've done is on the back of these, actually, I write down what in the world I'm doing. So this is a 3x5 workbench leg rail system, which is these guys. I'm running a 1.5-inch spiral upcut bit, and then my number 1 means I use my number 1 spacer. It tells me I have a twin mortise, and it gives me rough dimensions of what it does for my workpiece. And then I have a series of these, like this one. I don't know if I'm going to do this project anymore, so I'll probably keep the table, but if I don't want it, I can pitch it later on. This is another table I have that's a bit more permanent. So this is actually for a green and green sideboard, and I'm using a 1/4-inch upcut spiral bit. And this is for a leg rail system. Do you have that magazine handy, Kevin?
Yep.
So this would be set up to cut this. All the mortises for the legs and rails on this green and green table. This is a bit more permanent, so for this one, again, well, this one's actually simple. I just need the number 1 spacer. This would go in, screw it down, and then this is a bit more convenient. You basically would line it up where you wanted it, clamp it down, and go from there. Another table I have is a bit longer. And you notice I have some big holes through that. So what I'm doing is I'm actually feeding a clamp through and clamping the workpiece from that. But this again is just the rail and style, and it has my system 1B2, which means I need a number 1 spacer, a number 2 spacer, and a letter B spacer. So it's all in figuring out what you want to do. Of course, if you do this project, you could make this as complicated or as simple as you want. It's we just didn't want to get too crazy with a table that moves up and down by a series of cranks, levers, gears, and wheels.
Yeah.
So,
A nice simple way of kind of getting into doing this type of work. Loose mortise and tenon, basically. So yeah, that's the issue that's just actually just coming out now. So I think we just got these copies today. So it probably in the mail, I would say, in the next few days. So
we just got that?
Yep, just
Can
got
I read
that.
that?
No, not later. So we got a question from Jen and asking about leveling 14-inch diameter logs for end tables. And she's looking for suggestions on how best to make jigs that can be used on logs of different heights. So, so I'm thinking she's wanting to level the ends of these logs, but
It's kind of like a stump table.
yeah. And I'm thinking my first remedial thing coming to mind for me would be basically you could is even screw a couple boards to the side of the log that are level,
Yeah.
and then use a carriage of some sort to run across those two pieces of wood that you've screwed to it.
So what you're talking about is kind of making a crib, and then you have a router on a sled, and you just go
Yep.
right over the top
yeah.
of it.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, that would be the quickest, easiest ways to do that. That way, it doesn't really matter how long or of the table you want to, how long or high you want the table to be. You just attach it to the top of your log, and you're looking to level those pieces together.
Yeah.
Let's see.
It could also be an excuse to buy a really big chainsaw.
Okay, he says I don't want to damage the stumps. They're strip cedar. Okay.
Well, what I do is just build a crib around it. Basically,
Yeah.
4 2x4 legs,
Yeah.
and then so you're trapping the log within a wooden frame, but you're not screwing into the log at all. So you're
Yeah.
just trapping it in there.
And you can be a little oversized and then use wedges.
you could
and
wedge
just
it in there,
wedge it
and
and
then,
jam it in there that way.
Because a router is going to give you one of the cleanest cuts on end grain.
That's going to be a little tougher for varying heights, but I mean,
Yeah. Well, what you do is you start out with your tallest one and cut the crib down.
True. Yeah. So anyway, there's a couple ways of doing that. Hope that answers your question. Okay, so this is from Jack. He said, I'm new to woodworking, inherited lots of tools, and there was a box containing dado knives, but no blades. Can 2 matching blades be used as substitutes, or do they need to be specific?
So he has the cutters, but not the.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Or he has the chippers, but not the.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Sounds like chippers that are outside blades.
Yeah.
They're probably on the table saw.
Yeah.
Who bought the table saw?
Find who bought the table saw, and get your outside blades back.
Yeah. I mean, without knowing, and if you don't know the brand, you might be able to hunt down some replacements. I think the biggest thing is that when you buy outside legs, or buy the outside blades, the teeth need to make sure they will nest inside one another. That's the key.
Yeah. And you have to get the right diameter too, because those chippers are probably 6 or 8 inches. So you're going to have to track down outside blades that match up to that.
Yeah.
You might spend more money trying to match this thing up than getting a new good blade.
Yeah.
Or a good
A
set,
new set. So it
which
may,
is a bummer.
Yeah. And that's an investment. That I mean, dado blades. If you buy a nice set over time, that's going to last you for a long time. I mean, unless you're building cabinets after cabinets, dado sets should last you for a lifetime. They can be sharpened, so it's not something that you're just going to get dull and throw away. So. Okay. I wanted to talk briefly about. Last week we had a question about.
Joining or straight edging
Yeah.
without a joiner.
Yeah. Yeah, and we kind of talked about a few things, but I brought in a couple of props over here with a table saw, and this is obviously, if you have a table saw, this is a great way of doing this with maybe shorter pieces. Obviously, if you're trying to do an 8-foot long board, even with an 8-foot long board, the table saw is a pretty tough thing to do that on, or a joiner. So I've got a couple methods here. This is basically a carrier board that you set, and this width can be really kind of whatever you want it to be. This is probably set up really to handle mainly 6 inches or under. You're basically clamping your board to this carrier using these hold-down clamps, and you're going to find a point on that board where it's overhanging, and overhanging all along, but you're going to take off the minimal amount of material as possible. But you basically hang in your waist over the outside of that, and you're just going to rip that stuff off as you pass through. So you're going to get a nice, clean, straight edge. Obviously, a nice blade is key. Another method, and this can be used, say, if you're trying to rip down a sheet of 4x8 plywood. This one's a little bit shorter, but you'll get the idea. Basically, you set your circular saw up. This one's not made for this saw, but your fence will actually ride against that outer edge of the saw, and you basically clamp this down to your workpiece and cut it with a circ saw. And then, of course, today's market, we keep inventing or creating new things out of jigs that people create. This is part of a track saw system. I believe there's 4 or 5 manufacturers of these, and these are basically specifically designed for cutting straight edges. The saw actually has a cutout in the bottom of the saw, so it actually rides on this track, so you don't even have to worry about holding it against a fence like you do with this guy, but it gives you the ability to cut very straight lines. This one actually comes with a kind of a zero clearance type tape on the outside edge too, which is perfect for cutting expensive plywood. It also comes with clamps that basically clamp up underneath the substrate. So there's 3 ways you can do that, and I will also mention that, you know, if you can also set this system up, I think you can do the same with this if you're more accustomed to using a router. So you can do a straight edge with a router. But that's 3 ways. If you don't have a joiner, and that you can get factory straight edges. So anything to add to that?
I just thought of that piece I was doing where the edge was wavy and I'm standing at the joiner.
Yeah.
And you're laughing at me the entire time.
Yeah.
And it would have been faster just to get that out and do it that way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, the joiner, without a joiner, it does make it tough if you're trying to face joint get something flat that way.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, when you get down to that kind of problem, you may need to invest in one of these as your first joiner. You know, if you're trying to face joint and flatten stuff from that perspective. So
it is cordless and it's unlimited in width and length.
It is cordless. It will substitute for your aerobics class for the week.
They took the.
Kevin, we got a question from
They
Matt.
took your question.
They took my question, so-
Got a question from Matt Sandy. He says, any tips on finishing end grain? I've had it turn out really smoky and smudged looking when applying stain or oil. Not always, but but it's a bummer when it does happen. So any tips on finishing end grain?
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to the preparation. It's not the stain. It's just that the end grain obviously is going to absorb more moisture, thus stain. And the key is if you're going to go to 150 grit on the face grain, you may want to go up a few grits, finer grits, to 220. And you may have to experiment with this per different types of woods, because different types of woods are going to absorb stain more. Porous woods such as oak and ash will tend to suck in more as opposed to less porous woods. But it's just take that end grain to another couple levels of sanding will make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's all in the prep.
Yeah, I mean, I've never done this, and I don't know how well this works. And I'll tell you the reason I haven't done this, because it kind of makes me nervous. Is people will say they mix water and glue and paint the ends to try to stop
Glue
that.
size it. Yeah.
Glue size it, and I think you really need to know what you're doing or be very good at that. Otherwise, you'll end up with glue splotches all over the place. So, but that's a good question, and I think that's one of those things that a lot of people tend to overlook. When they're finishing their project, especially tabletop, the ends, and then you get to the end, and then you're starting to stain it, and then of course, it's one of those unpleasant surprises.
Yeah, you realize it when it's too late.
Yeah.
A question from Chris Roberts, who says, "Why is Kevin's table saw blade so high for a half inch of wood?"
Actually, That was up that high because I was cutting this piece of 8-quarter cherry that's on my bench. Not intending, I wouldn't use that high for cutting material, even on that sled. Typically, my table saw blade is, you know, a 1/4 inch or so above whatever I'm cutting. So typically, I don't like to see a lot of it exposed. But good question. So the new issue I wanted to let you know, we got pretty excited. There's tool review in here. We got the new random orbit sanders. Our tools editor Bob Hunter did his tester did a story on that. So pretty cool. We'll have to wait to see what the scoop is there, but those are a tool that we all use and use often. So we got the green table that you were kind of talking about. That's coming up in this issue?
Yeah. It's funny when we look at these issues because we're usually so far ahead in the builds that we get the issue and look at it and go, oh, I remember that. Because we're working on stuff that's going to show up next fall. And,
yeah.
This is stuff that we were doing last winter.
Yeah, so this was a piece of furniture that, if you're familiar with the style, green and green, they were a couple brothers who, kind of in the arts and crafts era, had their own kind of distinctive style. Big into using mahogany and big into using lots of accents, not just accents with wood, but they use a lot of inlays, metals and precious mother of pearl, things of that nature. And it's not a style you see a lot of, but was something we've done a couple pieces now, but we thought, hey, you know, this was kind of a classic one of their pieces. We did downsize this table quite a bit. I think in the original it's almost 6 or 7 feet long. It's really long table, but we did downsize this because it's huge. So we got a couple other projects in this issue that are kind of interesting.
Yeah, I saw that curio cabinet in there.
Yeah, we got a new curio cabinets coming up. It's kind of a neat little project. This actually has, instead of just swinging doors, I don't know if we had a picture in there, but the doors actually slide apart as opposed to being hinged. So,
you think I could read that, or?
yeah, sure, yeah. Go ahead. You're not contributing anyway. So, if you got questions, guys, please send them in. I did want to ask if those guys who are out there right now listening, if there was anybody signed up for Weekend with Wood. It is we're basically doing a 3-day seminar where we bring in, for those of you who don't know about it, woodworkers from all over the country that have their own woodworking schools and or do seminars on the road with the woodworking shows. Got some pretty big name people coming in. George Von Driska. Yeah. Is George is going to be teaching.
I hope George is still coming.
Yeah, hopefully George is still coming. Yeah. We haven't scared George off. We've got Mark Adams from the Mark Adams School of Woodworking out in Indiana. And then we have we got Terry Moore coming in from East Coast New Hampshire.
And Tom.
And Tom McLaughlin, also 2 guys from East Coast. So we have a really diverse group of guys coming in, and I think a few of our guys here are going to be teaching some classes. I know John will be teaching some classes, and I will be as well. So, we got any questions here?
There's a question from Cindy. She wants to know why when I use a skill saw on beadboard, why can't I cut it straight?
Well, I mean, there could be several things. I don't know. One is, trying to cut anything with a circ saw in a straight line. It's a pretty tough thing to do without a straight edge to keep it against. saws of that nature, one, the blades are pretty thin, and you know, if it hits some grain that's predominant that it wants to maybe follow, that can be another problem. My suggestion is to either, you know, make one of those straight edge guides like we have here, and it could be as simple as clamping a board to your substrate you're trying to cut, the beadboard.
And you can get a clamp-on guide too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, there's several methods. I think the one thing is to kind of help you out by not having to worry about trying to follow a line, but it just basically keep your saw up against a fence. I think you're going to have better luck.
This beadboard from the factories, is it straight? I mean, can you trust it?
sure.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think, you know, one thing about beadboard, a lot of times it's thin and it may tend to warp a little bit too, so that might be a challenge. But
Well, even just another trick is just get it on the ground. A lot of times we will put down a piece of foam insulation, just thin foam, get it down on the ground, get on top of it, and then you can wrestle it a little bit better than up on sawhorses. So, or your dining room table, or back of your car, grass.
He's
have a
not
question,
listening.
Dave?
Yes, I got a question from Grant. He says, you mentioned the joiner plane as a possible substitution for a power joiner. What other hand planes would you recommend for someone just getting started, and why?
well, that's a good question, Grant.
That is a wormhole.
Yeah. Well, you go ahead, because I'm going to stay up top.
Okay,
Don't touch my stuff.
it doesn't matter, they're all dull. Just kind of the jack of all trades planes to start with is probably the jack size, which we have a couple right here. So this is a number 5 size, and with this you can do a lot of stuff. It's not too long that you can't use it as a smoother. It's not too short that you can't get a good joint out of. So you can do a lot with this. You might have to sharpen it using different methods depending on am I taking a lot of material off or not. So that might be the only negative if you only have one plane is your setup time. But if you have a jack and you have a joiner, which Kevin has over there, and then just talking bench planes, this must be a 4. If you have a smooth size, so if you have these 3, you can do about anything. Once you have all 3, this can be set up as kind of a, I don't want to call it a rough plane, but it's somewhat rough, somewhat coarse. You're removing a lot of material. This would be set up as a medium plane where your shavings are a little bit more refined. You're getting a better finish on it. And then this would be reserved for final finishing. So if you're really good with planes, you actually can skip sanding in a lot of instances, but that would be a good starter kit just of bench planes. People have different ways of working. I'm to the point, I use jack planes, but I don't use them a lot. In a lot of my woodworking where I'm using power tools, I'm using hand tools, I'm using whatever I need to get it done, I tend to use joiners a lot. So I have 2 joiners, one's set up to do kind of fine finishing work, and one is set up to remove a little bit more material quickly to get straight edges and flat surfaces. So I don't use these as much. I reserve them more for special occasions, should I say. And actually, picking through here, this is a past project. We have a couple past projects. You know, this is an investment in materials and learning what you're doing, but this is actually a project that we ran in the magazine where we bought an old transitional plane, took the guts out of it, and made our own body around it. So there are a lot of ways to get into this.
And that's real nice.
Isn't this real nice?
Yeah, I'd one thing to add. It was kind of more general, but you know, hand planes. You know, having a block plane, and a lot of people start with these, and it's a great tool to have. And I mean, you're not going to, you know, do a lot of straightening boards with that, but it's nice to clean up some edges on. This is a low angle, which is nice too. Clean up edges on small pieces, or create a little chamfer on the edge of a leg or something. It comes in real handy. So
Yeah. And for those new to planes, the longer the plane, the flatter and straighter the board you can get. So when you look at, you know, a very big plane like this, a lot of people kind of get intimidated, but the size can work for you because you have a lot of mass there, so you get a lot of momentum going, and you can plow through more material easier than you can, for instance, if you're using a small plane. On the other hand, however, it does wear you out faster, so that's where maybe a wooden plane could come in. So, and then of course, besides these, you need all of those too. So it's like a lot of hobbies; it never stops.
Yeah.
So
Stay off of eBay. It could gets real ugly real fast. So, so I got a question from Alan that says the best thing to hide joints or break off pieces. I think he was talking about the line. You know, when you break something or whatever, and you're trying to patch it.
why would you do that?
Well, I know you've never done this, but myself speaking, it's one of those things where I know I've done this before too, where you've glued it, you think you cannot see the seam whatsoever. I think I've got this. This is perfect. This is beautiful, and then you put stain back on it, and it just pops back up. I don't have a magic solution for this, but you just have to make sure you're getting those pieces matched up as close as you possibly can. If you've lost some of the material, you know, one of the things you might consider if it's a break where you've got two rough edges is to basically smooth those two edges so that you're putting them together. You can have a finer line when you do glue it up. And then, you know, one of the things that I do, if you do have hairlines left over, there may be a small crack, as I actually will use some glue, and this has to be in very moderation, and sand that glue actually into the joint. So I hate to say the wood filler, but that's kind of what you're doing. And this works on very small cracks. This is not something you want to do on an 1/8 inch gap, because it will obviously not disappear. So.
Well, and a lot of times we know that it's there and it drives us crazy, but 99% of the people that look at your finished piece will never notice it. They can't see the forest from the trees. So Jim Heavey just wrote an article called Just Shut Up.
Yeah.
A lot of times woodworkers will say, here, I built this, let me point out everything I did wrong, instead of pointing out what you actually did right. So sometimes we're our own worst critic. If you just don't say anything, unless it's your wife, they probably won't notice. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And then walk up and they go, what's this?
It happens to the best of us. So I keep the questions coming. You know, if we're about ready to sign off here, but we do look through these questions, and maybe we'll answer them at the next show. We'll try to have some demonstration ready for you guys for the next go around.
Yeah, a lot of times our demonstrations come from good questions, so
yeah.
keep them coming, and we can keep doing this.
Yeah. So thanks and so long.